The first day of university was supposed to be normal for Daniel. He carried his books, checked his schedule, and walked through the noisy campus filled with laughter, rushing feet, and the smell of fresh coffee from the student cafe. For him, life had always been simple, even ordinary. That was about to change in a way he never could have imagined. When he reached his dorm room, he expected to find another student like himself. Maybe a boy with messy hair, a gamer, or someone who liked sports. But instead, when he opened the door, the air seemed to shift. There, standing in the center of the room, was someone who was not human at all. The figure was tall, taller than any person Daniel had ever seen. His skin glimmered faintly like silver touched with moonlight. His eyes rippled as if they were made of moving water, reflecting the light in strange ways. He had no hair, no eyebrows, nothing to soften the sharp angles of his face. And most shocking of all, he wore nothing. Daniel froze at the doorway. His heart hammered so loudly in his chest he thought the stranger might hear it. For a moment he thought he had stepped into the wrong building, or maybe into a dream. But no, this was real. The alien turned his head slowly and looked at him. "Are you Daniel?" the alien asked. His voice was calm, perfectly clear, but with a strange rhythm that did not belong to Earth. Daniel swallowed hard. "Yeah, who are you?" The alien straightened his long back, almost proud. "I am Koresh. I am assigned to live with you. This room is now our space." The words should have sounded ordinary, like what any roommate might say. But Daniel could not stop staring. Koresh stood there without even a piece of cloth on him, tall and silver in the middle of a human dorm room. Daniel quickly turned his head away, face burning red. Don't you have clothes?" Koresh tilted his head, eyes shimmering with confusion. "Clothes? Do you humans not like honesty of skin?" The question hit Daniel like a strange riddle. He looked back, struggling for words. "It's not about honesty. It's just, here we wear clothes. Everyone does." Koresh blinked slowly, like someone trying to understand a language that carried too much hidden meaning. He finally said, "On my world, to cover the body is to hide truth. Only the dead are covered. To live without cloth is to live free." Daniel didn't know what to say. All he could think was how impossible this semester was going to be. The university had warned him he might be assigned to share a room with an alien exchange student. But he thought it would be a rumor, or maybe just some research assistant. He never expected this. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. Daniel placed his bag down on his bed and tried not to look too much. His mind kept running in circles. How am I supposed to live with someone who doesn't even believe in wearing pants? Finally, Koresh spoke again. "Do your people truly fear the sight of skin so much?" Daniel sighed. He wanted to laugh, but the alien's serious tone stopped him. Instead, he felt something else, pity. Koresh wasn't trying to be rude. He wasn't mocking human traditions. He was simply lost in a world that did not make sense to him. Daniel turned to him carefully. "It's not fear. It's rules. People will be uncomfortable. They might laugh at you. They might even be cruel. Clothes are part of how we live. You don't have to understand it yet, but if you want to stay here, you'll need to try." Koresh's eyes flickered, softening like water under sunlight. He seemed to think about those words deeply. Slowly, he nodded. "Then I will try. For now." For the first time since stepping into the room, Daniel felt his heart calm a little. He didn't know how he was going to explain everything to Koresh. Shirts, pants, socks, jackets, shoes. It all seemed impossible. But one thing was certain. Life was never going to be boring again, and so the first day ended with two very different beings sitting in the same room. One human, one alien, and an ocean of misunderstanding between them. Neither of them knew it yet. But this strange beginning would grow into something far greater than just a shared dorm room. It would become a story of trust, of laughter, of pain, and of friendship deeper than either had ever imagined. The next morning began with quiet tension. Daniel woke up early, still trying to adjust to the idea that he now shared his room with an alien. He rubbed his eyes, expecting for a moment that yesterday had been some wild dream. But when he turned, Koresh was standing near the window, tall and silver-skinned, watching the sunrise with no clothes on. Daniel sat up quickly, face heating with embarrassment. "Koresh, you can't stand there like that. People can see in!" Koresh turned his watery eyes toward him. "See what? This is me. Why must I hide it?" Daniel groaned. He grabbed a clean t-shirt from his drawer and held it out. "Here, try this. It's what humans wear. Koresh reached for the shirt cautiously as if Daniel had handed him some strange weapon. He stretched the fabric between his long fingers, staring at it like a puzzle. He pressed it against his face, sniffed it, and even let the cloth slide across his cheek. It feels soft, Koresh said slowly. But it smells like chemicals. It's just detergent, Daniel explained. It's clean. Put it on. Koresh frowned but finally slipped the shirt over his head. The fabric clung to his silver skin in awkward folds. His shoulders were too broad, his arms too long, and the shirt stretched strangely around his chest. He looked down at himself with wide eyes, then tugged at the cloth as if it were sticking to him. This feels like prison, he muttered, his voice low and heavy. Daniel blinked. He hadn't expected such a dramatic reaction. It's not prison. It's normal. Everyone wears shirts, pants, shoes. That's how society works here. Koresh's shimmering eyes darkened. Society, he repeated almost bitterly. In my world, we do not hide. Cloth is for the dead. When someone leaves us, we cover their bodies so they may travel unseen into the void. But the living? We remain bare. We remain honest. Daniel felt a pang of sympathy. To Koresh, this wasn't just fabric. It was grief. It was like asking him to dress in mourning every single day. He tried to soften his tone. I get it, Koresh. I know it feels wrong to you. But here it's not about hiding or mourning. It's about comfort, respect, and survival. Think about winter. The cold will freeze you without clothes. Koresh tilted his head. Then your world is cruel. Why live on a planet that punishes skin? Daniel laughed quietly, though not out of mockery. Because it's the only home we have. For a long moment, Koresh said nothing. He simply stood there, pulling at the shirt like he wanted to tear it away. His face was calm, but his body looked tense, almost trembling. Daniel realized then that he was asking Koresh to do something far harder than it seemed. Finally, Koresh whispered, If this is your rule, then I will follow. But my heart feels hidden. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to say something comforting, but words felt weak. Instead, he went to his drawer again and pulled out a pair of sweatpants. Here, he said gently. Try these. They're loose. They won't feel so bad. Koresh hesitated, then took them. He studied the strange shape, puzzled, until Daniel showed him how to slip his legs through. When Koresh finally stood there in the oversized sweatpants and stretched t-shirt, he looked almost human, almost. Daniel smiled faintly. See? That's not so bad. Koresh's face remained unreadable. I feel like I am wearing another's skin. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to laugh again at the odd comparison, but he held it in. He remembered the promise he had made silently to himself. Never laugh at Koresh's struggle. Instead, he said, It takes time. You'll get used to it. People won't stare as much if you wear clothes. Trust me, it will make things easier. Koresh lowered his gaze. His long fingers brushed the fabric on his chest, slow and uneasy. Finally, he nodded once. For you, I will try. In that moment, Daniel realized something important. Koresh wasn't wearing clothes because he wanted to fit in. He was wearing them because Daniel asked him to. It wasn't obedience. It was trust. And Daniel knew he couldn't let that trust break. As the day moved forward, both of them carried the weight of it. Daniel wondered if he had done the right thing by pushing Koresh into human ways. Koresh wondered if he had betrayed his people by covering his skin. But neither said those fears out loud. They simply walked together into the unknown, two roommates from different worlds, each step a test of patience, courage, and something fragile beginning to grow between them. Something that looked a lot like friendship. The first week of classes began with nervous excitement for Daniel. He had already memorized the quickest paths between buildings and carried his books with practiced ease. But beside him walked Koresh, tall and silver-skinned, wearing the clothes Daniel had carefully chosen for him. A loose hoodie and baggy sweatpants. Daniel had thought the outfit would help Koresh blend in. But as they walked across campus, he quickly realized he was wrong. Everywhere they went, heads turned. Some students slowed their steps just to stare. Others whispered behind their hands. A few even laughed quietly, unable to hide their amusement. The sight of a 7-foot-tall alien in a human hoodie that stretched awkwardly across his broad chest was something no one could ignore. Daniel could feel Koresh stiffen beside him. His silver skin, usually shimmering brightly, looked dim under the morning sun. His watery eyes darted from face to face, trying to make sense of the stares. Finally, in a low voice meant only for Daniel, Koresh asked, "Why do they laugh when I obey your rule of cloth?" The question cut through Daniel like a blade. He searched for words, but none came easily. He knew the answer wasn't cruel, not really. Humans often laughed when something looked unusual, even if they didn't mean harm. But how could he explain that to Koresh, who took every gesture with deep sincerity? "They're not laughing at you," Daniel tried, forcing a smile. "It's just, you're new to them. They've never seen anyone like you before. Sometimes people laugh when they don't know how to react." Koresh blinked slowly, processing the words. "So they do not laugh from joy. They laugh from fear." Daniel hesitated. "Something like that." The day only grew harder. In the lecture hall, Koresh tried to sit in one of the narrow chairs, but his long frame barely fit. The desk bent under his weight, drawing more stares. When he raised his hand to ask a question about Earth history, his voice echoed across the silent room. Students turned to look, some with wide eyes, others with smirks. After class, Daniel heard two students whispering just loud enough, "Did you see his hoodie? Looks like it's about to rip." The other snickered. "He looks like a giant dressed for Halloween." Daniel clenched his fists, anger rising in his chest. He wanted to shout at them, but Koresh walked past without a word. His face was calm, but his shimmering eyes seemed darker, as if clouds had crossed over them. That afternoon, in the crowded dining hall, Koresh carried a tray of food carefully, his movements stiff. Daniel noticed how quiet he had become, how his usual curiosity was replaced by silence. When they sat down, Koresh finally spoke, his voice heavy. "I wore the cloth as you asked, yet they do not accept me. They see me as foolish." Daniel's chest ached. He wanted to tell Koresh that people would get used to him, that the laughter would fade. But looking at his tall, silver-skinned roommate struggling with a spoon too small for his long fingers, Daniel wasn't sure he believed it himself. "Give them time," Daniel said softly. "Humans, we take a while to understand what's different. But once they know you, they'll see more than your clothes." Koresh stared at the fabric covering his arms. "But do they see me at all? Or do they only see this disguise?" Daniel had no answer. That evening, back in their dorm room, Koresh pulled at his hoodie with visible frustration. He lifted it over his head and let it drop onto the floor. His silver chest caught the dim light, unhidden, unashamed. He stood there silently, as if daring the world to challenge him. Daniel looked at him and finally understood. For Koresh, wearing human clothes wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a wound. It was asking him to walk in chains every day, and yet Koresh had done it. Not because he believed in the rule, but because Daniel had asked him to. Because he wanted to belong, even in a place that greeted him with stares and laughter. Daniel's throat tightened. He realized this was no small struggle. This was Koresh sacrificing a piece of himself just to walk beside humans. And for the first time, Daniel wondered if maybe the humans on campus weren't ready for him at all. The next evening, Daniel and Koresh went to the dining hall together. Daniel hoped it would be better than yesterday. He hoped people would finally start seeing Koresh as more than just an alien in strange clothes. The hall was crowded and noisy, filled with the smell of pizza, fries, and coffee. Students moved between tables with laughter and chatter. For Daniel, it was a normal scene. For Koresh, it was another test. He walked slowly, balancing his tray of food with careful hands. His hoodie sleeves were too short for his long arms, and the sweatpants sagged a little at his waist. Daniel could see he was already uncomfortable. But Koresh was trying. He was trying so hard. At first, no one said anything, but then a group of students near the corner table noticed him. They were older, loud, and not careful with their words. One of them smirked and pointed. "Hey, look at that giant lizard in a hoodie." Another student laughed. "He looks like a Halloween costume gone wrong." A third leaned closer to Koresh as he passed and tugged at the sleeve of his hoodie. "What's this? You hiding something under there?" The group burst into laughter. The sound echoed too loud, too sharp. Koresh froze. His tray trembled in his hands, the food shaking dangerously close to falling. His silver skin dimmed like a flame covered by smoke. Daniel's stomach twisted with anger. He wanted to step in to yell at them, but his voice stuck in his throat. "Don't listen to them," Daniel whispered quickly, touching Koresh's arm. "Just keep walking. Let's sit somewhere else." But Koresh did not move. His chest rose and fell too fast, like he was fighting something heavy inside him. His shimmering eyes, usually soft and curious, now looked clouded with pain. He stood there silent, surrounded by laughter that wasn't meant for him but still cut deep. Finally, he turned and walked out of the dining hall, his steps uneven. Daniel rushed after him, leaving his own tray behind. When they reached the dorm room, Koresh didn't sit. He didn't speak. He pulled the hoodie over his head and tore it from his body. He yanked off the sweatpants and threw both pieces of cloth onto the floor. His silver form gleamed under the dim light, bare and trembling. "No more lies," he shouted, his voice shaking with rage and grief. "I cannot wear your chains. I cannot carry your shame." Daniel stood frozen. He had never heard Koresh shout before. His words weren't just anger, they were pain, heavy and raw. Koresh dropped to the floor, his long arms wrapping around his knees. His body shook, not from cold, but from something deeper. His voice, when it came again, was softer, broken. "On my world, to cover the body is to hide from the living. To wear cloth is to mourn the dead, and you ask me to mourn myself every day." Daniel's chest ached. He knelt beside Koresh, not knowing what to do. He had thought clothing was a small thing, just a habit. But to Koresh, it was a wound reopened every time he stepped outside. "I didn't know," Daniel whispered. "I didn't understand. I just wanted people to accept you." Koresh looked up, his eyes shimmering with tears that caught the light like glass. "But they do not accept me. They laugh. They stare, and I feel lost in cloth that is not mine. I feel like I am dying every moment I wear it." Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, to say it wasn't that bad, that things would get better. But the words felt empty. He couldn't ask Koresh to keep suffering just to make humans comfortable. So instead he said softly, "You don't have to wear it here. Not in this room. Not with me." Koresh blinked, surprised. For the first time that day, a tiny flicker of light returned to his eyes. He nodded slowly, as if that small promise gave him space to breathe again. The room fell quiet, heavy with emotions neither of them had the courage to name. Daniel sat beside Koresh on the floor, silent but close. And in that silence, Daniel made himself a vow. No matter how hard it became, he would not let Koresh face this world alone. That night, the dorm room was filled with silence. The laughter from the dining hall still echoed in Daniel's head, sharp and cruel. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Across the room, Koresh sat curled in the corner, his silver form dim in the glow of the small desk lamp. He had not spoken since his outburst. Daniel wanted to say something, anything, but he was afraid of saying the wrong words. Finally, he took a breath. "Koresh," he whispered. "I'm sorry." For a long time, there was no reply. Daniel thought maybe Koresh had decided to ignore him. But then the alien's voice came, soft and low, carrying weight like a stone dropped in water. "Do you know why cloth hurts me?" Daniel sat up slowly. "Because on your world it means mourning. You told me." Koresh nodded, his eyes shimmering faintly. "Yes. On my world, when someone dies, we cover their body so the living do not have to see the silence in their skin. Cloth is a curtain between life and death. To wear it while alive is to carry death upon you." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had thought clothing was a small problem, a cultural difference. But to Koresh, it was grief. Every hoodie, every pair of pants was like a funeral shroud. Koresh continued, his voice breaking slightly. "When I walk in your cloth, I feel like I am saying to everyone, I am no longer alive. I hide myself because I am gone. It is not comfort. It is not safety. It is emptiness." Daniel swallowed hard. His throat burned with guilt. "I didn't know. I should have asked more. I just thought it was normal, and you'd get used to it." Koresh looked at him with tired eyes, full of sadness but also understanding. "You did not mean harm. You wanted me to be accepted. And I tried, Daniel. I tried because I trusted you. But today, when they laughed, it felt as if I was already buried." The words cut deep into Daniel's heart. He wanted to reach out to comfort him, but his hands shook. Finally, he whispered, "Koresh, what's it like on your world? What do your people wear?" Koresh gave a small, fragile smile. "We wear nothing. Our skin is our truth. When we meet each other, we touch arms or shoulders, and the warmth tells us everything. Joy, sorrow, strength, weakness. There are no secrets. No barriers. To see someone's skin is to see their soul. We live open. We live honest." Daniel imagined it, a whole world where no one hid behind cloth, makeup, or masks. A place where no one laughed at difference because difference was part of truth. It sounded beautiful, almost painful in its purity. "We're not like that," Daniel said quietly. Humans, we hide, sometimes from each other, sometimes from ourselves. Clothes help us feel safe. They give us space to be who we want, even if it's not always honest. Koresh tilted his head. So your cloth is not truth, but protection? Yes, Daniel said. It's protection from cold, from fear, from judgment. We don't see it as death. We see it as survival. Koresh thought about that for a long time. His fingers brushed his silver skin as if testing its warmth. Finally, he nodded. Then perhaps I can learn to wear your fear. But promise me something. Daniel leaned forward. What? Promise me, Koresh said softly, his voice trembling, that you will never laugh at me. Promise you will never make me feel like my skin is shame. Daniel's throat tightened. He had never seen someone look so vulnerable, so fragile. He nodded firmly. I promise. I'll never laugh. Not at you. For the first time that day, Koresh's eyes shimmered with a gentler light. He unfolded his long arms and leaned back against the wall, breathing slowly as if some heavy weight had lifted. The room grew quiet again, but the silence felt different now. It wasn't filled with anger or shame. It was filled with something softer. Trust. Daniel lay back down, but his thoughts stayed awake. He realized Koresh wasn't just his alien roommate anymore. He was something more. Someone who had placed his heart in Daniel's hands. And Daniel knew, deep down, that he could never let it break. The next morning, the mood in the dorm room was different. The storm of last night had left a quiet calm. Daniel woke to find Koresh sitting on the edge of his bed, studying a folded shirt in his hands. It was not the thick hoodie or the heavy sweatpants. It was one of Daniel's lighter shirts, soft cotton, pale blue in color. When Daniel rubbed his eyes and sat up, Koresh spoke softly. This one feels less like chains. Daniel smiled carefully. It's softer. You might like it better. Koresh nodded slowly, then slipped the shirt over his head. It still hung oddly on his long frame, but he didn't pull at it or tear it away. His silver skin glimmered faintly through the thin fabric, almost as if the shirt had become part of him rather than something against him. It was a small step, but Daniel felt hope stir in his chest. That day, Koresh walked across campus wearing the pale blue shirt and loose pants that Daniel had helped him find at a secondhand shop. The stares were still there, of course. Some students still whispered, and a few even laughed quietly. But there was a difference. The clothes fit him better, and his posture was no longer tense with anger. Daniel noticed how Koresh carried himself. His shoulders were straighter, his steps less heavy. He still looked strange, but he no longer looked defeated. In class, Koresh raised his hand again, asking questions with the same deep curiosity that had always been in him. The students still turned to stare, but this time some of them didn't laugh. Some even leaned forward, listening to his words. After class, one girl approached him shyly. Koresh, I liked your question about ancient Earth cities. You made me think, Koresh blinked, surprised. His watery eyes softened, and he gave a small nod. Thank you. Daniel watched from a distance, his heart swelling with quiet pride. Koresh had begun to shine, not because of the clothes he wore, but because he was finally letting his true self show through them. Later, in the dining hall, Koresh carried his tray more steadily. A few students greeted him with awkward waves. One even asked if he wanted to join their table. Daniel could see Koresh hesitate, his hand tightening on the tray, but then he nodded and sat with them. It was not perfect. There were still whispers, still giggles from the corner tables. But for the first time, Koresh was not walking out in silence. He was sitting down. He was trying. That night, back in the dorm, Daniel found him folding the pale blue shirt carefully, almost reverently. I think I can endure these, Koresh said. Not all, but some. The lighter ones, the brighter ones, they do not feel like graves, they feel like colors, Daniel smiled. That's good. Maybe clothes don't have to be chains for you. Maybe they can be something else. Something that's yours. Koresh tilted his head, thinking deeply. On my world, skin shows truth. But here perhaps color can show truth. I will wear cloth not to mourn, but to share. Daniel's chest tightened at those words. He realized Koresh had not simply accepted human rules. He had transformed them into something meaningful for himself. It wasn't surrender. It was adaptation. Over the next few weeks, Koresh chose brighter colors. A yellow hoodie that seemed to glow against his silver skin. A green shirt that reminded him of Earth's forests, which he loved to watch through the campus windows. Students began to recognize him. Not as a joke, not as a stranger, but as Koresh. They whispered less. They listened more. Some even smiled when he walked past. Daniel saw the change in his roommate's eyes, too. They no longer looked clouded with shame. They shimmered like water under sunlight, alive and curious again. Koresh still struggled. He still hated the heavy clothes, the stiff jackets, the shoes that pinched his long feet. But he wore what he could bear, step by step, for Daniel, for the campus, and for himself. And slowly, he stopped being the alien everyone stared at. He became Koresh, the student who asked brave questions, the roommate who shared snacks, the tall silver figure who always tried, even when it hurt. In those small steps, Daniel saw something greater. Koresh was not just learning to wear human clothes. He was teaching everyone else how to see beyond them. And that, Daniel thought, was the beginning of something extraordinary. The semester was ending. The trees outside the dorm had begun to change color, their leaves turning shades of red and gold. Students rushed across campus with books in their arms, laughter in their voices, and stress on their faces. Amid all that noise, Daniel noticed something. Koresh was walking differently. Gone were the nervous steps, the constant pulling at fabric, the sharp looks toward anyone who stared too long. Instead, he walked with calmness. He still stood out, of course. His tall silver frame and glimmering skin could never be hidden. But he no longer seemed burdened by it. He walked as if he finally belonged. That morning, Koresh wore a loose white shirt and light green pants. Nothing fancy, but the colors seemed to reflect the soft light of the sky and the earth. He didn't hide in shadows anymore. He carried himself like a being who had chosen his own way. Daniel smiled when he saw him. "You look comfortable." Koresh tilted his head and gave a small smile in return. "I am not wrapped in chains today. I am wrapped in choice." Those words stayed with Daniel the whole day. Later, after their final lecture, the professor stopped Koresh on his way out. "Your insights this semester were unusual but deeply valuable," she said. "You helped us see history from an entirely new angle." "Thank you." Koresh bowed slightly, his watery eyes soft with gratitude. Other students nearby nodded and even clapped. For once, Koresh didn't lower his gaze. He accepted it, standing tall. Daniel's chest tightened with pride. His alien roommate, once mocked, once broken, was now respected. That evening, they sat by the campus lake. The sky was painted with sunset colors, orange and purple spreading across the water. Koresh sat cross-legged on the grass, watching the reflection of his silver skin shimmer against the waves. "I used to fear clothing," Koresh admitted quietly. "I thought it erased me. I thought it buried me in silence. But I see now, it can be a voice too. It can say who I am if I choose it." Daniel nodded. "You found your way. You didn't just copy us. You made it your own." Koresh turned his gaze toward him. "I could not have done it without you. You listened when others only laughed. You waited when others only mocked. You became my bridge." The words hit Daniel deep in his heart. He swallowed, his throat tight. "You're my friend, Koresh. That's all I ever wanted, for you to feel like you're not alone here." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft sounds of the lake. Then Koresh reached out with his long hand, placing it gently over Daniel's. His touch was cool but steady. "On my world," Koresh said softly, "to cover one's skin is to hide truth. But here I learned that sometimes the truth is not in what you show but in how you carry it. You taught me that." Daniel's eyes burned with unshed tears. He squeezed Koresh's hand. "And you taught me that humanity isn't just about humans. It's about connection. It's about choosing to see each other." The sun dipped lower and the first stars began to shine above them. Students passed by, some waving at Koresh, others greeting Daniel. The stares were still there, but they no longer cut like blades. They were softer now, curious, even welcoming. Koresh no longer hid. He no longer flinched. He simply existed, proud, tall, and shining in his own way. When they finally stood to walk back to the dorm, Daniel noticed something. Koresh was not just his roommate anymore. He was family. The alien who once struggled with human clothing had found something greater than style or comfort. He had found belonging, and Daniel realized something too. The story of humanity was not written only by humans. It was written by every being who dared to reach out, to adapt, to share, and to live together. That night, as Koresh folded his white shirt with care and set it aside, He whispered one last thought before sleep.